Hello and welcome to Das German Kritic. But hey, außer mir macht's ja keiner. And today we are finally reviewing the last movie in our lineup of non-German films. In a way, you could say that the theme throughout this entire lineup would have to be love. The love a father has for his son, the love a student develops for his teacher, and the love between two people of the same sex. But what happens when love takes a rather dark turn? When the feelings expressed by one party might not be shared by the other? Well, then, my friends, things become very dangerous. Cracks comes to us from director Jordan Scott and is based on the book of the same name by Sheila Kohler. And no, I have not read the book, so shut the fuck up. But there is one major change from book to movie that I will get to once we get to that part. Starring Eva Green, Juno Temple, Maria Valverde, and Imogen Poots, Cracks tells the story of a group of girls in a boarding school in the 1930s. So put on your swimsuits as we dive into the deep, dark abyss simply known as Cracks. As the opening credits roll, we're shown several establishing shots of the landscape surrounding the school itself, as well as the lake and pier, which features a prominent role in the film. We're then introduced to Dee Radfield, played by Juno Temple, and her teacher, Miss Gribben, played by Eva Green, simply called Miss G. And their clothes is all we need to know about their character and their relationship to each other. Miss G's tie and manly attire convey a sense of self-confidence and worldliness, whereas Radfield's uniform clearly conveys a sense of innocence and, in a way, subservience.
Miss G, I wanted to thank you for lending me the book.
Did you read it?
Yes.
Did you get caught?
No. And anyway, I'm not sure what all the fuss is about. I wasn't corrupted.
Good for you. Let them put that in their pipes.
And considering that this takes place in the 30s, yeah, it might as fucking well be the anarchist's cookbook. We then get this short scene of Radfield confessing quote-unquote lustful thoughts toward a boy to the school priest. But given that this is a priest, Radfield might have given him some ideas. Cut to a breakfast scene which is designed to show Radfield's status within the small elite class that Miss G is in charge of. We know that they're an elect few because they're actually the only girls in this entire school that actually wear those red ribbons around their skirts. Long story short, she bosses everyone around and even gets called captain by the other members of the quote-unquote Red Ribbon Club, as I'll go on to call them. We're then introduced to Miss Neven, played by Sinead Cusack, the headmistress, who introduces a new girl to the school coming from Spain.
We have a new girl coming all the way from Spain to join your team. And I want you to welcome her on her arrival. I know that you are not always pleasant to new girls, but I want you to be particularly nice to this girl because she is traveling such a distance from another country, another background. She's also a Roman Catholic, but she will attend religious services with the rest of you. I want you to be kind. This girl is an aristocrat. She's accustomed to the best.
Yes, Miss Neven.
Do you all understand?
Yes, Miss.
Oh, and after that, we get this gem from the girls.
Roman Catholics are superstitious and ignorant. That's why they had those ghastly pictures of Christ bleeding with nails in his hands and thorns on his head. Catholic nuns bury their babies in the backs of convent gardens, and then they're walled in, standing up. They can't even sit down to die.
Okay, first off, Catholics, Protestants, same div. From where I'm standing, you're all fucking crazy. And secondly, the Catholics are superstitious. Yeah, tell me about the rapture. Scorpion locusts with human faces and lion's teeth. Tell me how fucking legit that is. At gym class, Miss G then goes into a questionnaire on what's most important in life, and it's here where it's most obvious that she clearly favors Radfield over the others, as she is the only one who gives the only satisfactory answer to Miss G. So what's the question she asked? What is most important in life? And the only answer she deemed satisfactory? Desire. Now, sure, having desire in life is important, and I guess the modern equivalent of this would be always follow your dream or, some such bullshit. But I think the amazing atheist has some choice words on that matter.
Always believe in your dreams. What if you dreamed you were supposed to blow up a Chuck E. Cheese? Should you believe in that dream? Kesha says, be yourself no matter what. Isn't that fucking great? What if you're a serial killer? Or what if you are a child molester or a terrorist? Should you still be yourself, or should you maybe comply a little bit more to the rules of society?
We're then introduced to Fiamma, played by Maria Valverde, by way of a poem recited by Poppy, played by Imogen Poots. The poem is by Percy Bysshe Shelley and goes as follows.
I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
Incidentally, the poem is quite fitting for both Italy and Spain, the country Fiamma is from in the film version of the novel, as both countries have a rich antique history. Fiamma then meets her roommates and, as usual, Radfield asserts her dominance as captain by explaining the quote-unquote rules to the new girl.
During your brief stay with us, Your Highness, the rules are: you must do up the top button of your shirt when wearing your tie. You must ask permission from a teacher or prefect if you wish to remove it. You may wear mufti on Sundays, after chapel and before high tea. And you are allowed 5 personal objects on display. The rules are for everyone. No exceptions, no favorites, no pets.
The next day, we see the girls during diving class. Since she's the new girl, Miss G isn't impressed with her at first, But after seeing her dive like a pro, Miss G starts to take a liking in Fiamma, much to the dismay of Radfield. Cut to spring, where we find out Fiamma was sent to this school for having a romance with a boy called Pablo. Okay, I know this makes absolutely no sense, considering the guy was in his, 50s at the time this movie takes place, but wouldn't it be fucking hilarious if this was actually Picasso she's writing to? At breakfast, we see that Fiamma received a huge box from home filled with sweets and other things. Yet, in the scene that follows, we find out that Miss G not only secretly stole some of them beforehand, but also a few pictures Fiamma received from her parents. And this is the only point in the movie where changing Fiamma's nationality from Italian to Spanish makes any sense. And the film manages to fuck it up. You see, if Fiamma was actually Italian, as in the book, the pictures of Rome would make much more sense, as they would be a device sent by her parents to make her feel less homesick. But by making Fiamma Spanish, it just comes off more like her parents are sending her pictures and photos from their latest vacation to Rome. So then, we get to see a scene where Miss G takes the girls out for a good old-fashioned midnight skinny dipping. Sounds sexy, but there's a more sinister side to it. For one, being the creepy pedophile teacher she is, it's a chance for Miss G to see Fiamma and Radfield naked. And secondly, we get to hear stories told by Miss G about her travel experiences. Something that'll be important later in the film. And if wanting to see her naked wasn't bad enough, we're then treated to this scene in which Miss G skulks around the school's archives, taking a look at Fiamma's files. And Fiamma's parents' reason for sending her to the school seemed dire enough as, in the letter, we see the words scandalous behavior, horrible debacle, and great deal of anguish. Of course she gets caught by Miss Niven, who immediately reminds Miss G about the school's strict policy of confidentiality and how every girl is to be treated equally. Which completely negates the scene from earlier. You know, the one where Miss Niven reminds the girls of Fiamma's aristocratic background.
I just felt if I knew a little of her history, I could be of more help.
All our girls are to be treated equally, regardless of their past, as you well know, Miss Gribbon. You have been with us a long time.
I'm sorry, Miss Niven. It was an error of judgment. It won't happen again.
See that it doesn't. The world is a perilous place. It would be a shame for you to have to find that out firsthand.
Now, I might be reading a little too much into this, but if you look at the way that Miss Niven talks to Miss G, and in terms of relationship, I'm having this vibe that Miss Niven is to Miss G what Miss G is to Radfield. Get my drift? We then cut to a very pivotal scene where Miss G tells her girls another story about one of her adventures. While Miss G talks, however, Fiamma discovers the pictures sent to her by her parents and, as an act of revenge, decides to embarrass Miss G in front of everyone. So, how does she do this? Well, simple. Turns out that all of Miss G's stories that she's been telling the girls this entire time are actually directly plagiarized from a book. A book that Fiamma has actually read herself. This then compels Miss G to turn into Professor "In this classroom I am God" Radisson from God's Not Dead by punishing Fiamma at the next diving lesson. At this point, it's important to note that Fiamma suffers from what I assume to be asthma, as we see several scenes of her where she uses some sort of primitive inhaler. How does Miss G do that? Well, simple. By making Fiamma dive over excessively, despite that asthma condition, which leads to Fiamma almost drowning. And to add to the physical abuse, we're then treated not only to a scene directly afterward where Miss G basically tries to convince Fiamma that she sees herself in the ladder and that Fiamma just doesn't see it, but also a breakfast scene where she brings Fiamma the equivalent of a 5-star meal. Naturally, this sort of affection has caused the girls, first and foremost Radfield, to become jealous of Fiamma, which causes them to chase Fiamma out of the school. Yet, it seems this drastic experience has made Fiamma, for lack of a better phrase, battle-hardened, as during the next diving lesson, she decides to turn the tables.
I'm bored of practice. When do we compete?
Oh, we can have a little competition now, if you like.
No. I want to compete against another team.
Radfield, pick a team.
Lily.
Fiamma, you can be captain of Team B. Your turn to choose.
Oh, okay. Real competitions against other schools with prizes and trophies. You do have trophies.
Miss G?
We're training to compete.
How many meets have you attended with this team?
None.
None.
We've never competed.
You've never been ready.
But I feel ready.
I feel ready too.
What's the point if we don't compete?
I won't tolerate a mutiny. Since Fiamma seems to know what's best for you, let her take the reins.
Sometime later, and out of sheer boredom, the girls decide to have a midnight feast. And feast they do, all while getting stinking drunk and talking about boys. Unfortunately, they get so loud that Miss G finds them along with a completely passed out Fiamma. And now we come to the rape scene, because this show can't have a movie lineup if there's not at least one rape scene in it. And the worst part? It's actually really pretty to look at. I'm not even joking. This might be the prettiest rape scene ever recorded. It's shot well, the music is just gorgeous, and the lighting leaves you questioning whether you should be repulsed by this or not. And remember, guys, this is the 30s, so the fact that two women are engaged in sexual conduct is a felony alone. Gladly, I wasn't the only one with conflicting emotions regarding the scene, as we then see Radfield peeking through the crack at the door, coming to the faulty conclusion that this was consensual, and of course being repulsed by it. Naturally, the next day, Radfield confronts Miss G about the night before, and in an obvious attempt to redirect from her own despicable behavior, Miss G then plays the victim card by saying Fiamma seduced her and is now going to spread rumors about Miss G raping her in order to get the latter fired. Being duped into believing it's all Fiamma's fault, Radfield then entices the other girls to chase Fiamma across the school grounds and into the nearby forest, where they proceed to beat the shit out of her for so long that Fiamma gets to the point of suffocating. Realizing that they've gone too far, Radfield orders them to find Miss G. Thanks to the script, Miss G appears pretty much out of nowhere in front of Radfield, who, I presume, then rushes off to get Miss Niven and the school nurse. And then we get to see Miss G straight up murder Fiamma by denying her the primitive inhaler. She of course does this for two reasons. For one, to prevent Fiamma telling others about being raped, and secondly, I'm assuming there's the whole if I can't have you, then no one can have you mentality behind it as well. Radfield soon comes back, but by that time, the deed has already been done. And the look she gets from Miss G is one of the scariest things in this movie. I'm not even kidding. Pause this film at the 1 hour, 25 minute, and 45-second mark, and Eva Green's performance will fuck you up. Thankfully, the girls aren't beyond redemption and regret their behavior that led to Fiamma's death. Long story short, Radfield tells the others that Fiamma was murdered by Miss G, which rightfully causes the girls to turn on the latter. Radfield then does the right thing and goes to Miss Niven about all this. But, judging by this scene, she's more interested in keeping up the school's reputation than finding out what actually happened.
I appreciate your coming to see me, Miss Radfield. We all feel we are in some way to blame. But you must accept that this was an act of God and not allow rumor and hysteria to tarnish this school's reputation. Miss Gribbin will, however, be taking a leave of absence to deal with this tragedy. Beyond that, I consider this matter closed.
The last scene of the film shows Miss G in a small hotel room where she counts the things on her nightstand. A clear reference to the scene at the 14-minute mark. So this was Cracks, and as with all films in this lineup, it has its ups and it has its downs. And just as with the first film in our lineup, we're going to take a look at the bad stuff first. The first issue I have, profusely, is Eva Green's performance in the scene where the girls abandon her. I mean, sure, this is the scene where her entire mental construct breaks down, but Green's performance does seem a bit over the top for my taste. Secondly, there are several inconsistencies within the film that do stick out. The first one is obviously Miss Niven saying all girls are to be treated equally, even though, at the beginning, she emphasizes Fiamma's aristocratic status. Also, at the end of the film, I think it's implied that Radfield leaves the school for good. Even though the film clearly establishes that any runaway girl is immediately transferred back to the school. But, thankfully, this film does have a lot of ups to even the downs. First and foremost, there are of course the great performances given by Green, Valverde, and Temple. Especially the scenes between Green and Valverde really do make you feel uncomfortable at times. Then there's the large amount of subtext going on throughout the movie, specifically the last scene with Miss Niven, and it makes you wonder what other fucked up shit went on in this school. And lastly, there's the absolutely beautiful score by Javier Navarrete. Every piece in the soundtrack fits the scene in which it's used perfectly, specifically Fiamma's introduction and the rape scene. Which shouldn't come as a surprise, given that this is also the guy who wrote the score for Pan's Labyrinth. So this was Cracks, and if you're looking for something that's disturbing, but not necessarily gory, that has a beautiful soundtrack and a hot villain, then this is the movie for you. This was Das German Kritic, and in the next episode, well, let's just say it's going to be another first for the show.